Oh, my goodness, this crowd is so big. And just, I know that's why I'm going, no, that's not good. And you guys might need to sit one more apart so you can concentrate. And it's not the pastor I'm worried about. Well, we are starting here at 7:02ish, and we're going to finish our last night. So are we ready back there? Okay, we're on live across the nation, or maybe up to Milton. I don't know where we're going. Okay, we have a huge PowerPoint this week. We have 2 slides. We already finished the first one, and now we're on the second one. Why don't I pray? And then we're going to watch a video and then do some practice groups. So let's pray. Lord, thank you for what you've given to Ed Smith. Thank you that he's a man who's humble enough to learn and change and grow and keep developing things that make life a lot easier for us. And so help us to learn from his work, and as he's kind of paved the way for us, we just want to follow behind him. So I pray for your blessing on us tonight. Amen. So I had this little association pop up into my head as I was praying. And have any of you ever drafted a semi? Do you know what I mean? You're on the interstate. Semi is going pretty fast, and you get about 5 feet behind them, and you get sucked along. It really helps your gas mileage because you have this good illustration based on association principles, and then a pastor ruins it. Well, maybe I did that before I was a Christian. Anyway, why I brought that up is we're in a sense drafting Ed Smith, and he's gone through a whole lot of learning and thinking through things and coming up with ideas that are effective and helpful. And the results are that we get all the benefits of his hard work over the years. And I just think, wow, what a blessing. Because if you ever had to figure this stuff out, you'd be sitting there going, oh, should I be learning something here? Or what's going on? So I really appreciate what he brings to the table. Tonight we're going to watch a video that they do every week. They're online, live, at around noonish, and then sometime in the evening for about maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours. And they just talk about what people have written down as little questions. So the people type in a question, they'll answer it. And tonight's video is going to be on how to offer orientation in a TPM session. So let's say I'm your friend. Okay, I'm kind of pushing the envelope here, but let's say and you know about TPM, and I'm complaining to you about all my problems, and you go, well, Chris, why don't you do TPM with me? And I'll go, ooh, what's TPM? And and you explain a little bit, and then I do it with you, but you don't orient me towards how it works, and it just flies off the handle because I don't know how to answer the questions. I don't even know why it's there. And then I get a bad taste in my mouth, and you kind of look at Chris and you just go, oh, he's a loser because he can't, that's a lie, and that he can't figure this out. And so getting an orientation before we meet with someone and helping them through is pretty important. So Ed's going to talk about that, and then Josh is going to come in about every 5 minutes and say something too. Then tonight we're going to do some practice sessions. Then this is the last meeting that we're having here. And so what probably would be good is for you guys to pray about what you want to do next. And to, after you're praying about this, maybe watch these weekly videos because they're pretty fresh and you get all the latest stuff. And you can also type in little questions and they probably could answer. Then we might want to meet with a continuing group for training and hearing from God so that you choose some people that you're comfortable with and say, hey, can we continue this and work on learning the map and working on my heart and then working on me being able to train other people. And so that's something that they've written all this stuff, done all these videos so that we can do this on our own. and we can practice this in our personal life, but also serve other people that are needy. Because this isn't just a counseling thing to help people with problems. It's a lifestyle because we all have problems. And it's a tremendous thing. Some people won't like it because they don't want to admit that they have issues, and that's sad. Anyway, and then we have two different churches involved here. One we have Janesville, one we have Madison. So you might want to talk with your pastors about what their preference would be about if there's some groups that would start up or not. I've already started one up in Madison, and it's not with women, but we may get some women ones going up there. So at this point, why don't we go ahead and watch our, I think it's a 35 or 6-minute video. And are you guys ready? Okay.
I come in and I say, my friend recommended that I come in. He said he received tremendous healing from your ministry. I have these issues. I have this pain. Quite frankly, I want to be fixed. But he tried to explain this, what is it, TPM to me? And I don't fully understand. Can you, what are we going to do here? And help me out.
Well, Jeff, what I do is I follow the person even when they come in and tell me their story. I don't try to dictate. I don't try to determine where they are. I try to listen to what they're telling me. And if they come in and say, yeah, my wife, she's always blah, 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 I go, okay, this person needs to understand the principle that no one or any person can cause us to feel anything that we feel. So I may start right there with that principle and say, well, I hear what you're saying, and I understand what you're saying, but what we do in this ministry is we recognize is that our emotions are reflective of what we believe. I feel whatever I believe. If I'm feeling fearful, I'm not just having a random fearful feeling. I'm having a feeling that matches something I'm thinking about. If I feel anxious, it's because I believe something that's causing me to feel. So I explain that principle. Then I say, and then a second most important principle here is that yeah, okay. And if your wife is doing what you say she's doing, it's inappropriate. But I'm not going to bat for you or her here. But I want you to understand is that your response to her is an example of what I just said. You're feeling what you're believing. You're not feeling what your wife's doing. You're not feeling your wife's behavior. Your wife is not making you feel anything. You feel what you believe. She's touching beliefs in you. It's coming forward. You feel emotion. And John, how would you feel, or since it's Jeff, would you like to get to the place where your wife, maybe she won't change, maybe she'll keep doing what she's doing, but it just won't impact you? You won't feel irritated. You won't feel all stirred up. You won't feel all these emotions. Rather, you'll have the peace of Christ. Would you want that? Well, I think, Jeff, you would say, well, yeah, of course I'd want that. Well, then the first thing we got to do is let go of this belief that says that my wife is the reason I feel bad, because it's not. And so hopefully at that point I've caught your attention. And it makes logical sense. I've never had a person yet. Well, I had one lady that came to me about 5 different times, and as soon as she walked in, she would say, "Bill's blah 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 blah." And I said, "Okay, listen, Bill's not in the room today, Martha. It's just me and you. So how about we leave Bill out? Let's talk about concepts here." And I would do the orientation. After about the 5th time, she came in and she said, Bill said that, and then she just kind of slowed down. And I could say, maybe she got it, And she said, and I know you're going to tell me that he's not causing me the way I feel, and it's because of my. I'm going, okay, well, at least you're remembering what I said, So we have slow learners, we have quick learners, you have students that get in there and just get it, and you got people who just seem like they just can't get their head around it. But at some point, they begin to buy into those concepts. So I spend my time with whatever they bring out into the room because that's where they are, and then proceed to do the process. Now, after they encounter Christ and they have a transformation, that's typically where I stop the process and spend the whole rest of the time talking about the questions we ask, why we ask them, the purpose of the questions. You notice a while ago when I said hesitation, resistance, what I meant by that, and I go back and I take the rest of the time because I don't need, they got the rest of their life to deal with all the lies that they're believing. So whether I get 1 or 5 in a session is not going to make a whole lot of difference, but it'll make a whole lot of difference if they can understand 4 or 5 principles that help them to interpret life as it's coming at them. They quit blaming their spouse. They start recognizing that I got to take ownership here. They learn how to position themselves to hear. If they get that, that's lifelong. Okay. But if they don't get that, then they're going to be pain managers. And as soon as the pain tolerance goes down to a certain level, they won't come back and see me because they don't need me to solve the problem anymore.
And essentially, it's not as though that's some special case of mentoring. It's the same old job, because you're watching them apply the process, and at square one, they're blaming somebody. Well, probably poor technique, because you're watching them apply the process, and at this point, going back to those 2 reasons for why they're struggling to take that next step, either they just don't know what they're doing, or they do know what they should be doing but have reason not to. And so in this case, very likely it's just pure ignorance. They just don't know what they're doing yet. And so, especially if this is their first session, second session, it's very likely that they haven't done any homework. They're just showing up like per your example, because their friend told them they needed to. And so they don't even understand what this is. Well, there you go. A mentor is going to step in and explain that. Because that's sort of the gap that needs filling, or the bridge that needs crossing, is figuring out, well, why are we doing this? What is this that we're about to learn about and apply? So those are the things that need to happen right up front. But not because that's something special or unique. That's what a mentor does, is it helps fill in those gaps, and point them to the text, point them to TPM Live, point them to the existing videos, for the purpose of them getting more and more familiar with what they're doing. Now, obviously, you're also going to have all sorts of solution behaviors in almost every session, but there's always going to be that component of there's something they need to learn. There's something they don't quite get. And like in his example, it's pretty obvious, and it's right at the beginning. It's because of Bill. Well, no. Let's explain why that's not true. And get in there and address the ignorance component of it. And then move on to, well, do you have any resistance or hesitation at the thought of not blaming Bill? Well, of course I do. Okay, well, here we go. We'll go over the solution box. But that really is where you're going to be a lot of the time. And to kind of go back to one of his original points in being, once we've gone through, they've applied the process, they've identified a lie they believe, connected with the Holy Spirit, he's convinced them of the truth, and there's the evidence for that in the transformation box. That's good enough. If you're with either one of us, that's good enough. Even on your very first session, that's enough for me, and it's for the purpose of, now we have an example to pull from to explain more stuff. We're going to get right back into the training mode, and let's look at what you just did and explain the heck out of it, so that you understand what just happened, so that you understand what you were just applying. Right. Now you were just acting in response to the questions I was asking, but you were actually doing something, and let's look at what that was. You were actually connecting with your emotion, and things were coming to mind through that natural process of association. And once that same memory came to mind a few times, remember when I was asking that real annoying question over and over again? Yeah, I remember that. Okay, well, here's why. Okay, and then when we got over here, this is on the memory box, and you remember these questions that I was asking. This is the purpose for that. And once we finally identified, a potential lie-based heart belief, we moved over to the belief box. The reason why I asked that question is to establish a baseline, and we just explain it, but using what they just did as the example. So I'm not pulling from some theoretical example or my own journey. I'm able to use what they just did and saw and felt, and so that's ideal.
Let me make an emphasis here. When I come to the belief box and I'm going to ask them, not is it true, but does it feel true that you are, whatever their lie was, I'm worthless or no good. I kind of pause right there a little bit and say, because I said this is an important question, because we're going to come back to this question in a moment. So I want to make sure you understand what I'm saying here. I know, and I'm assuming that you probably know, is that what you just said is really not the truth.
Sure.
You understand the scriptures say that you have great worth and value. Matter of fact, Jesus' very life was paid for the value of your life. And so you have great value with God. So we know that's true. But what I'm asking you here is not, is it true, but does it feel true? As you think about that memory and what we just walked through and that belief that you're worthless and no good, does that feel or seem true to you? Now, when they go, yeah, that feels true. I said, now remember that, what you're saying right here, because we're going to come back to this point. Now, I overemphasize that because when I get down to the transformation box and I said, does it still feel true? And they're going, no, it doesn't feel true at all.
Right.
I go, okay, now, this is why I put so much emphasis up here, because I want you to go back up, because a while ago that felt really true to you. And you said it felt true. But now, does it feel true? No, it doesn't feel true. How did you get there? Do you recognize there was a shift in your thinking there? Now, I had one guy who said, well, I guess I must have just logically, rationally figured it out. I said, well, then why did you take so long? I said, that happened back
yesterday.
That happened back when you were 8 years old. And it took you this long to figure. He goes, maybe God spoke to me. I said, well, let's think about that. I want them to make that connection, because when they leave that room, I want them to have hope that, hey, it worked there. Maybe it'll work again and again and again and again. But if they don't see that or understand that, they leave the room. They don't even make it to their car. Somebody triggers them. They're going, that TPM stuff didn't work.
Didn't last very long.
I feel bad again. But if they understand the principles, they're going to go, no, that lie doesn't feel true anymore. Right. And I don't feel what I felt about that. But I do feel something right now, which means there's something else going on there. But there's hope there, because it worked over there. Maybe it'll work again. And so I spend a bunch of time right there with folks. I want them to see is that you believed a lie. It felt true. The Holy Spirit revealed his truth to you. The lie no longer feels true, and you feel the peace of Christ pertaining to that belief. And so if they get that, that's a big jump for those folks.
Right. And that's where the session needs to focus, is in equipping them. And correct me if you disagree, but I would say the longer you're with somebody, or the greater their understanding of TPM, the more we actually apply the process in a session. So like the less they understand it, the less time we're actually spending applying the process, and the more we're spending in orientation and training and explaining things and answering their questions. Because like if you're in a session, like if we're doing a session together or something, I'm not really spending a whole lot of time explaining things to them. It's basically just me getting out of his way and asking the appropriate questions whenever they're necessary. But it's basically just 99% applying the process, and then maybe 1% me offering hypothetical suggestive TPM 0.3 tweaks we can make. But for the most part, it's just applying TPM. But now, if either one of us are with somebody who's new, the majority of the session is going to be teaching, explaining, mentoring. It's going to be fostering their understanding of what they're doing. But once they get it, there's no need for me to beat them over the head with it. If they understand what they're doing, all right, then do it. But if I'm watching you do it and it seems like maybe you don't know what you're doing, or you're bumping into solution behaviors and you're not even recognizing it, well, we may need to slow things down and talk about it, so that we can understand what we're doing in a session. Looks like Marlene's got.
Well, I got a question over here on YouTube. The guy says, the person says, I've studied TPM in the early 2000s, but I need current help. Which book do I need to start with? I'm a Christian counselor. I want to brush up on dealing with trauma. If your training is the year 2000, then you're 21 years behind.
Well, 19 and a half years, I guess.
So we do want to catch up.
Well, no, because 2000, that still would have been 2000.
In the early 2000s.
Oh, well, yeah.
Could be 20 years behind. And so.
Well, let's say the most current thing at that point, not that any of this even matters, would be the 2007
Now,
stuff.
here's the good news is that what we taught, I say we, Joshua was about 8 years old.
I was there running book tables and cameras and griping about
But what I was teaching in 2000, apparently God used in some very powerful ways, and people's lives were radically changed. And so I said to someone not too long ago, is that it doesn't take, I don't have to hand God a sharp axe. He can chop down a tree with a dull axe.
Well, you can cut down a tree with your hands if you've got enough time and determination.
But the axe has been sharpened over the last 20 years.
Yeah.
I think the TPM today is by far more effective. God is the same. He hasn't changed at all. He's doing exactly what he's doing.
And essentially, you're doing the same thing. You just have a better idea of what that thing is.
Yeah. Well, anyway, the question is, what book do I need to start with? I would strongly encourage you to at least do a quick read through the entire book of the Essentials. Start there. There's the process of, well, some of the process there give you some update.
Some intro.
But that's the more important book, but it's not the how-to. The how-to is in the brown book or the red book, whatever color that is.
Especially if you want to brush up on dealing with trauma. Okay. Start with the green book.
Because another thing is that people are not in pain, emotional pain, because they were traumatized. And it's not because they're traumatized, present tense. They're in pain because of what they learned in the context of the trauma, potentially.
And still believe.
And they still believe it. They brought the belief forward. The memory of the trauma is not causing them any pain whatsoever. Now, they're going to disagree with you and say, you're crazy. If I think about that trauma, I have a panic attack. I go, no, I understand that. But once you know the truth in your heart, you're still going to have that same memory. The memory is not going to change, but you're going to look at it and you're not going to have a panic attack.
When you have divine perspective on it.
You're not going to be able to feel anything but just peace, calm, resolution.
I mean, the bottom line is, and I don't know if we've ever brought this up before, but Jesus does not have PTSD over being crucified. No. And he remembers every gruesome detail, but he was not traumatized by what happened.
Right.
You know, and the primary reason is because perspective. He's able to view it from God's perspective and goes, gosh, that was hard, but it was good.
Yeah. The only reason why a trauma has impact on our lives is because of how we interpret the trauma. I mean, I use this illustration. I've kind of beat it to death, but I don't even know what you call the fighters that are in the cage fighters, where you put the two guys in the cage. And they literally just beat each. It's the closest thing to gladiators as we have today. I mean, they literally have leather gloves on, and everything's pretty much legal. You can do whatever you want to. After the guy is already basically passed out, you can just keep punching him in the face. Anyway, at the end of the fight, neither of the two are traumatized.
Right.
But especially one of them is going to be beat to a pulp, knocked out, incapacitated. At the end of it, one guy's jumping around, hallelujah, I'm the world champion. The other guy's disappointed and he feels bad, but not because he got beat up, but because he didn't win.
Right.
But now here's this funny thing. You take either one of those two guys, you put him walking down a dark alley one night, and four guys jump out and beat him half to death with clubs, whatever. Now he has post-traumatic stress disorder. He has to go to counseling. He has to work through. Why? Because he thought he was going to die. He thought of this. He believed something in that traumatic moment that stayed with him that now has traumatized him.
But it wasn't the beating.
But the beating in the alley may have been less of a beating than he just got when he was in the ring. Well, what's the difference? Perspective, perception, interpretation. Well, that's true for all of us, is that we interpret life, and when we do, it impacts us. It changes how we live our lives.
And that is what we're experiencing beyond the physical discomfort of being beaten up in a ring or in a back alley. That's the world that guy's living in, is his understanding of what's going on, and his perspective of wit's going on. But,
so, Trina, I would encourage you. I can barely read. My eyes are going bad. So it's Trina. Just encourage you to start with the Essentials book, and also dive into the mass amount of videos that are there. And also, don't see this as I got to get trained, because you're not going to be trained if you spend 1,000 hours with the material. You're going to be more equipped. I don't know what it means to complete the training, because
I'm still working on it.
We've been working on this day in and day out since you were looking at it back in the early 2000s. And
as soon as you complete it, we're going to tweak it. And then you're going to get mad again.
So I encourage you to just look at it as a marathon. It's a lifelong journey. Grow with us, learn with us, and especially you're going to learn in the Essentials book is that the training is not to equip you to help the emotionally wounded. The training is to equip you for your life journey. And as you go on your life journey with God, as He renews your mind and refines your faith, you're going to be mentoring others to do the same thing.
Right,
You're
to
going to
do
be a
what you're
mentor with a mentee. And so that person that you're going to be praying with is not someone you're doing TPM on, rather it's going to be someone that you're going to be teaching them to do what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really encourage you as you read this book, this is for equipping you for your journey with God. And then as you take that journey, you're going to equip others that God brings across your path. Try not to look at it as just another tool in my counseling tool belt, but rather it's a lifestyle.
Marlene, did you have something to add or ask or yes? Okay, I see your head nod. All right, I'll bring you on and then you'll have to unmute yourself.
Okay, I did find that documented in my spam, but the question I had to ask is, so we can do this with people who aren't believers.
I've done it with quite a few through the years, yes.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to make sure.
I don't change anything at all whatsoever. Now, here's the deal. They can encounter Christ, and the Lord can reveal truth to their minds, and they can come to a place of peace about whatever it was they were having something turmoil with, but they're still lost.
Right.
But it's an interesting thing, when they taste the goodness of the Lord, they get hungry for it.
Mm-hmm.
And I look in the New Testament, and there's no reason to believe that the majority of the people that Jesus healed physically were believers. They believed that he could do something, but they weren't necessarily followers of Christ.
Right.
Matter of fact, when the lame man is walking along and they said, "Who told you to carry your mat?" He goes, "I don't know. He didn't tell me who he was." He didn't even know who Jesus was. And even the blind guy, who was this guy? He didn't know who he was. So Jesus didn't even spend much time introducing himself. He just said, "What do you?" The lame guy was lame by the pool of Bethesda. He goes, "What do you want?" Well, what I want is I want to walk, but every time I try to get down to the water, nobody will help me. So he showed, I'm going the wrong direction. Jesus says, "Well, then just take up your bed and walk." And he said, took up his bed and he walked. But
On the Sabbath?
But he didn't say, "I'm Jesus Christ, the Son of God, who has come in the flesh to take away the sins of the world." And he didn't tell him any of that. He just said, "What do you want?" Right. "Well, I want to walk." "Oh, okay, well, then take up your bed and walk."
Yeah.
And then the guy doesn't even know who Jesus is, but he got a taste.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't know what happened further down the road with that man.
Sure.
But I believe that when people taste the goodness of the Lord, they get an appetite for it. Mm-hmm. And I found that the lost people that I've done TPM with, after the session, they were very willing and desirous of entering into the kingdom. Mm-hmm. They wanted more of what they got. But they weren't saved because Jesus said, "You're not there anymore, you're safe now," right, or "You have value with me." That didn't save them. That's right. Not the gospel.
Right. Now, the same process or mechanism needs to take place, but just for a different set of beliefs. Yes. If they need to be, in the same way they were convinced that they're safe now, that they didn't die, or that it wasn't their fault, they also need to be convinced of their sinful state and need for him, and the fact that he's solved that for them if they want to go that route. If you want to put down your own solution behavior of self-righteousness and I'm a good person and I can do enough, or I just don't even think he's real, if you want to put that down and live over here in the truth of, no, you were in a bad spot, but I sent my son and he took care of it for you. If you can be convinced of that, then you move over. So it's the same concept that needs to take place. Yeah. The Spirit's doing the same work in an unbeliever as he is a believer. He's trying to convince all of us of the truth. It's just there's specific truths that need to be dealt with first that are more important. Because I would rather know who Jesus is and know why I needed him to do what he did, but believe I'm going to die and that I'm stupid and worthless, than know that I do have value. I'm not stupid or worthless, but I don't know about what Jesus accomplished for me on the cross. That's a much worse spot to be in the long run. And so there is a priority of beliefs that need to be addressed up front. So he's trying to convince the world of sin and righteousness, and he's trying to convince us of all truth. It's like, now that we checked off the important ones, now let's move on to the tertiary, the secondary, the slightly less but very important truths of who you are and who I am and what all that means.
Okay.
A person is asking on YouTube, do we have groups practicing TPM in Arlington, Virginia? Let me answer that question for the whole world. Is that we don't have groups anywhere in the world that we recommend or that we would say, well, here's a group or here's a group. because I don't know what people are doing. I know of people who say they're doing certain things, but we don't have groups that we personally endorse or embrace. There are folks I have friends with that was a group out in Texas called Serenity Retreat that I feel confident they're doing a great job. Do I recommend? I can't because I don't know with certainty.
Right.
You know, there's a group here near us that's in Simpsonville, South Carolina, that I know them personally, and I think they're doing a great job. But we don't personally say, yeah, go here or go there.
Right.
All I can encourage you to do is just watch on Facebook, watch on the lines here. If you see folks from a certain, make the contact yourself.
Sure.
But
well, go ahead and finish what.
But then make sure if you do connect with those people that you go there with the knowledge of TPM, so that you can be discerning, because I can promise you there are people out there that are saying they're doing TPM, and they may think they're doing TPM, but they're not. And so that's why I'm hesitant to recommend.
Yeah.
So I just encourage you to do your own homework, equip yourself. If you enter into a group, be discerning. Don't make the assumption, well, hey, they say they do TPM, so they must. No.
And you can't be discerning unless you know the material yourself.
Right.
And that's what I was going to say, is that the most important thing you can do in your search for other people is equip yourself.
Right.
Because that is going to be the biggest limiting factor. Because even if you find somebody, you've got to be able to discern, okay, do they actually know what they're doing? Are they even close? Are they consistent in what they're doing? And beyond that, where is it that they're off, so that I can, again, mentor them, so that I can point them back to the training, send them this video or whatever the case may be, to help them better understand what they're doing, even as a mentor.
Yeah.
So that's the most important thing, is just learn it yourself. Like you said, do your homework.
Okay. Got any more questions on Zoom before we close this out?
Thunderstorm coming. I need to disconnect my computer. Thank you. Thanks for stopping by.
Was that metaphorical, or was that like
maybe a literal? Well, he's in Florida, so probably a literal thunderstorm.
Okay. I was going to say there is
it's 1 o'clock. So yeah, that's thunderstorm time.
Okay.
1 to 3. It's like the world ends every day, and then you get a beautiful sunset.
Because I've noticed there is a thunderstorm coming, but it's God.
Right.
God is going to use it to purify His church.
Yeah.
Someone just recently said to me, Ed, what are we going to do? The world's falling apart, blah blah. I said, well, I'm not going to do anything different than I'm doing. I said, actually, this is the most glorious time in church history. God is,
and you were picked for it. Strange enough.
And God is getting ready to bring about a purification that the church has never seen before, and it's going to be difficult. And some people are going to say it's painful, but the truth of the matter is that the fire itself, the refining fire itself, cannot hurt you, and it doesn't cause you any pain whatsoever. Persecution is not painful. I know right now I'm having people going, Ed, you're nuts. No, the truth is it's not painful. Your emotions, the pain that you're feeling, is coming from how you're interpreting what's happening to you. When God purifies your faith with truth, you'll be able to do like Stephen when he's being stoned to death and the rocks are pummeling him and hitting him in the head and all kinds of stuff. He says he looked up and he saw heaven open up and he says, glory to God. Look at that, Jesus standing next to the Father. Isn't this a wonderful day? Then it says he went to sleep. Only because he saw with his eyes
the truth.
The truth. When he saw the truth, the pain went away. Now, the physical pain was still there. That hurts. Right. When I say persecution doesn't hurt, I'm not saying if you're being burned at the stake, you're not going to feel your flesh being caught on fire. That's terrible. That's terrible. But that's not emotional. That's physical. The emotion that's flowing from me is coming from the interpretation. I read the Fox's Book of Martyrs. It's an interesting read. When you hear some of the believers of old as they're being sawn in half and burned at the stake and everything else, but yet they seem to have a piece of Christ. They're singing as they're singing hymns as they're being led into the lions to be eaten and being torn apart. One fellow, he's being burned at the stake, and his arm gets loose, so he's holding his hand up, praising God while he's being burned at the stake. One fellow falls out of the fire and he crawls back in. I'm going, what is going on? I'll tell you what's going on. The truth. Yeah. God is revealing Himself. He's perfecting them in that flame. And so, the fire's coming. I mean, here in America, it's looking like a major mess, but it's God getting ready to purify His church. Our church has been moving, I'm going to get in trouble here, but it's been moving, I think, in the wrong direction for a long time. And God is going to pull her back to Himself. He wants us to be a community of like-minded believers who are caring for each other, loving each other, ministering to each other, living as a family together in union and harmony, and exercising our spiritual gifts, and we've turned the church into what happens on Sunday morning.
We've gotten very distracted.
Yes,
Let's
and
say
so
that.
I'm not going to be surprised if God doesn't just change a few things that's going to bring about a cleansing and
refocusing.
purification. And I'm believing that this ministry right here is one of the ways that God is going to equip His church for the fire that's coming. And so learn it well, keep practicing it. I said this to somebody a few weeks ago on one of our live broadcasts, is that the fire is coming, but God has also given you a little time right now to work on cleaning up as much as possible between now and when the blaze does get here, because every lie that you can deal with on this side of it won't be there when you get there. And so you won't have to mess with that stuff. And so I say, take advantage of the time you've got right now and let God really do a work in your life. And those little minute, minuscule moments of anxiety, a little bit of stress, a little bit of fear, a little bit of overwhelmed feelings, those are all indications that you believe lies. Yeah. But Ed, I don't stress that much. Well, I know, maybe you don't believe lies that much, but a lie believed a little is still a big lie. And so I'm encouraging you, if you feel a little bit of frustration, a little bit of tension, a little bit of worry, a little bit of concern, those are all warning signs you're believing lies. Get cleaned up. Keep positioning yourself to receive His truth so that when the fire of adversity comes and God stretches forth His hand, as in the book of Job, and brings forth that fire upon our lives, we will be purified by it and become more and more transformed to the image of Christ.
Sort of the inverse of what you're saying is, focused on the belief in a lie. If you just tweak that and make it my need of truth, my lack of His perspective, because essentially it's the same thing. And yes, today when your car doesn't start, or you got fired, or your wife said what she said, that yes, your lack of divine perspective of the truth, it feels about like this. It's impacting your life to this extent, but that same lack of perspective in another, let's say, more intense situation may have much more impact on you. Same belief, same lie-based belief, same lack of perspective, but depending on the context, it brings about very different results. And so it'd be better to start plugging those holes now before the water really starts rushing in. Right. And not just for your sake. I think your sake is the least of concern. The bigger picture is your effectiveness of being a light on the hill. Your saltiness is what is most important, and not so that you can be salty for your own benefit, but so that you can be salty for their benefit. So that you can be a light for their benefit. So they have something to look at that's different from how everybody else is responding, and they go, okay, something's up with that guy, because he's on the same boat I am, but he's not panicked. He's asleep with Jesus during the storm. What's that about? Well, let me tell you, man, I'll be your mentor. It's about perspective. It's about truth. When you know the truth, it sets you free. Okay, so that's the biggest benefit or purpose in getting your refinement and you coming into the truth, is for other people's sake. It's not just about you. So don't think that your journey is about you. Your journey is about the people that it's going to impact. And that's if nothing else, let that be an additional motivator for owning your stuff, and getting the perspective that He's trying to give you now, while the temperature's at a lower to moderate setting. That way you're more effective when it does get turned up, and not just for you, but for them, because they need someone to look to. But anyway.
Well, guys, thank you for being with us today. And as always, we thank you for those of you that are supporting us financially. God bless you. We appreciate it.
And God bless the rest of you too. But
yeah, exactly. But especially you guys helping us pay the bills. We appreciate that.
An extra measure of blessing.
Yeah. And we'll probably see some of you tonight at 8 o'clock. And if not, we'll see you next week. So
and invite your friends, because we can't get a hold of them.
Yeah. Send out an email to somebody that's using TPM and say, are you going to watch tonight, 8 o'clock, or whatever you want to do. But just encourage people to help us out with this. God bless you all. We'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.
That will conclude our videos. And if you all have my email address and want to send me any suggestions or thoughts or whatever, if we ever do something like this again, that would be helpful. So I think we're all done. And if we want to break up into groups, let's do it. So, thanks.